So I'll just give you like a little introduction, I guess, to kind of what I'm wanting to do here. So I already sent you the questions, but you didn't want to really look at them a whole lot in advance, right?
I looked at them a little bit, but I haven't given it a lot of thought. I want to
Okay,
be
perfect.
spontaneous, you know.
Perfect. What I'm wanting to do is to create a collage of just different people with different worldviews, how they're sort of experiencing uh, kind of the way that the world is right now. What I'm hoping to show is like if we can't even have conversation with people who are presenting as different than us, then how can we proceed, basically, right? Like how can we even interact? So basically what I'm doing is I'm approaching this like I'm an alien from outer
Okay.
space. So
That's
I'm figuring out just what humans are doing right now.
yeah.
So I don't have any kind of, in this context, I don't have any kind of attachment to anything.
Okay.
So I'm not really coming at this from a perspective of like, I've got any sort of point that I'm trying to make. The only thing that I'm interested in is basically the relationship that you have with your worldview. And so obviously that will come into, there'll be the context perhaps of other worldviews,
Sure.
but I'm asking you to bring those up
Yeah.
as opposed to me.
Sure.
So this is a space where you have the driver's seat. One of the things that I already acknowledged to you before we started recording, but everybody besides you that's responded to this invitation, right, has been white cis male, right? And I do think that there's a noticeable difference in sort of the comfortability level with like, yeah, I'll sit down and have this conversation. Why do you think that is? I guess for you, with your experience, what was your experience even deciding to have this conversation?
I think I I think to answer the first part of the question, it's like I think people feel a lot more comfortable in themselves when they feel safe, like to talk. And I already knew you, so that was a part of the reason why I felt safe enough to like come out here and talk politically because I knew you. I know you, and I know that you're not going to be like, well, now I have this argument, and now I got you, and now I'm going to make you sit there, and I'm going to put it all over the internet for people to laugh at. I think that a lot of people like in like a minority group like feel like it's gonna be an ambush because I mean from their experience a lot of the time it is. And I think that that's like a part of the reason why you were probably struggling to get people on because it's like of a minority group. It's like they could certainly walk in here and maybe think that they might be safe, but in their experience they probably haven't felt safe in a really long time.
For the sake of being put in a box for a minute, and then we're going to take you out of that box, but how would you, I guess, self-identify as a worldview, like personal, political?
Politically, just straight answers, I guess. Tend to lean more conservative, very libertarian though,
Okay.
in that aspect of things.
Okay.
Just kind of think people, really want to look out for themselves and so that's kind of my thoughts on that. Maybe just also the how well it's a little difficult when you're on camera all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
yeah.
You're like there's a
Yeah.
little more pressure, but
Yeah,
I don't even need to focus on that.
Right,
It's
yeah,
like, you just
yeah,
need to
yeah.
act like it's a conversation.
That's right.
But,
That's right.
Yeah, libertarian is kind of my worldview in that aspect of people just kind of focusing. Most people tend to focus on themselves, and it's kind of the bad side of humans, is what I kind of think. And what kind of, I don't know if I should go into what shaped my worldview already,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
I remember being in this class in college, and I went to BYU, Idaho, so it's a bunch of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? And there was this game that we played, kind of like the prisoner's dilemma, of like, if everyone picks the red button, right, everyone gets 50% added to their score. But if less than 50%, anyone that picks the blue button, gets gets a automatic 100% on like the score or something, is what it was. And then, but if a certain number, if you go over a certain number, pushing the blue button, then no one gets any points, right? And so I figured everyone having the same ideas, raised the same way I was, they would pick the red button so that we could all go up 50% in our score. And that didn't happen. And it happened, we did it a few times, and every time it did not work out. And I thought, man, these are moral, good people, but everyone just in the end kind of looks out for themselves. So maybe if the world was run in a way that you could control man's ability to not look out for themselves, like control it to where if you don't get people in power, right? You get too many people in power, or the certain people in power, they tend to look out for themselves and make the worst option. So like limiting that power, limiting that power is really what I think.
I'm curious. So with that, sorry, 1 second. You said you tend to so conservative libertarian. Can you explain? Because I feel like libertarians get a lot of grief socially. Why do you think that is?
I mean, they don't have the answer for everything, is honestly what it is. As I said, most people kind of choose the wrong. So a good example is like national parks, right? I don't have a good idea of how to solve the problem, like to not have national parks, because there's so much beauty in the world, and I just feel like the humans would destroy it. So you kind of need that governance over like a national park, for example, and other things, because just if it fell onto one sole owner or private, then it would, they would probably destroy it or make it inaccessible to others, because of that natural ability to not, to only look out for themselves. So that's kind of.
So would you say that libertarian mindset is more weighted towards holding government accountable, or more holding corporations accountable, or is it kind of even in your mind?
I would say even. I mean, you hold government accountable, but I think the government should hold corporations accountable. Is my main thought. Is the government's main job should be to, protect the rights of the people. And that should be like the only thing the government really does.
Do you see the government as being of the people, by the people?
Yes, yeah.
So in essence, that's us governing ourselves,
right,
basically. And so it's, whereas with a corporation, then that's not. That's a separate entity that is needing to have. I mean, to me, as I consider that, it would seem to be then that a corporation would require more oversight because there's less.
I think that's fair in the sense of like an oil spill happening, right? And it can impact the lands or rivers that you're kind of on, and the corporation, they created the problem. The government should then step in because it's impacting the people. The government should step in and be like, you've infringed upon the rights of the people. You need to pay for this and enforce it. Right now, I don't think that's obviously happening, where corporation and government kind of working together to avoid solving that problem. So I guess, yes, there would be a little more oversight on corporations in my mind. Maybe that's not a true libertarian, but...
Okay. Why would that not be so? A true libertarian sort of pose?
Well, I mean, it could be argued. The famous thing about libertarians is no one's a real libertarian. They're the only real libertarian. So that's why I say it. Just people argue about that.
That's funny.
I don't think any of us are in this world by ourselves. We're supposed to work together to accomplish goals. We work together to create and maintain a civilization. And that takes a certain amount of cooperation.
If someone was to want to put you in a box, I guess, to help them sort of categorize where you are on some kind of spectrum, how would you identify to help them out?
Well, I would say I'm politically liberal. I am spiritual and I believe in Christ, but I'm not into organized religions. So
how does that play out for you? So you have a belief in Christ, and you have kind of a liberal, I guess, kind of political mindset. What does that look like, I guess, in the day-to-day for you?
Well, I'm running for the state legislature because I think the Republican Party has lost its way. And this being primarily a one-party state, with the Republicans having a supermajority in the legislature, you know, and you have a party that's lost their way and they're the only party, that creates all kinds of problems.
So for you, it's a question of, would you say it's kind of a question of balance? Like there's an imbalance?
Well, yeah, there's definitely an imbalance. And this is true in any situation where you have a strong, unbreakable majority. I think in states that have a strong, unbreakable Democratic majority have a problem. Because that kind of power leads to overreach. And whether it's coming from the left or the right.
There's no black and white. Even though sometimes we as human beings see things as black and white, that's not really life. Life isn't black and white. So there's gray everywhere. So the layers of conservatism or being a Republican, to me, which I know I don't agree with all the Republicans, but it's, I'd say, a right to life, be it pre-born or after born, right? This idea of justice in life. And some of my justice thoughts pull from Frederick Bastiat. He wrote a book. He was a financial dude, but he wrote a book called The Law. And one of his quotes, my favorite quote, that I probably won't get right exactly, but it's, laws aren't there to create justice. Laws are made to prevent injustice. Of course, meaning just firefighters, cops on the road don't stop something bad from happening or a fire from happening. But we have them for right after. So when I say after life begins and just protecting that, that's what I really mean. Like, how do we, as humans and individuals, make sure that everybody's getting a fair shot?
Okay.
Yeah, and then just, I love the Constitution, right? Like, the Constitution, our amendments, the first 10 Bill of Rights, you know, just, I believe deeply in all of those. And have dedicated my life in two different aspects to them. So.
Can I, because I should be more educated than I am, but you mentioned the first 10. Are those like?
Yeah, like speech, freedom of speech, Second Amendment, right to bear arms, Third Amendment, that's like no porting soldiers in somebody's house, right? Fourth Amendment, of course, a big one, free from unreasonable search and seizure. Fifth Amendment, you know, you don't have to speak. You don't have to speak against yourself in court. And then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they get a little fuzzy on. But 8 is double jeopardy, having to do with double jeopardy. 6 is having to do with legal representation in the court. You have a right to a jury of your peers. 7 and 10, I can't remember off the top of my head.
But there's more after.
Yeah,
10,
and
right?
there. I think there's 23 that have been added, or in total. I might be wrong on the number, but yes, more have been added. Of course, we have the 14th Amendment. That's a big one. Yeah. So.
Okay. So, by and large, what would you say that the Constitution means to you?
It's the framework that connects me today to the founding fathers and their ideals back then. And it's what keeps, if we're a river flowing downhill, you know, the natural geological process causes these bends in it, right? Like a river can't run straight, only man-made canals do that. But a real river hits and they have these swirls and eddies, and then it causes it to bend, and then it happens on the other side. And so that's why we see like the Snake River do what it does. So that's what keeps us flowing in the same direction, though, and not just going over here and down a different face of the mountain. We're flowing down this mountain that says truth and justice and the pursuit of happiness for Americans, a better way, and for whoever comes to America. My family, on my dad's side especially, immigrated from Norway. So, like, I think that's very important. It's baked into our culture and our people. So,
Morning.
With that story, how are you processing some of what's happening right now, some of the conversations, the rhetoric that's happening? How are you processing that?
that is a super, obviously difficult conversation and process.
I think the best term to describe me is progressive. And the reason why is because what is progressiveness, right? If you are going to progress on something, it means you're going to make work, right? You're going to work towards a goal and hopefully accomplish that goal, right? So being a progressive doesn't mean you have to accept any necessary backbone ideology. It's about evaluating what's best and working together towards a solution and or a better, system, whatever the goal may be. But a progressive is just somebody who wants to see better in society.
So do you resist sort of the left or right kind of spectrum a little bit?
I think I do. And I don't know if you really want to dig into it now, but I could talk about why I think they're really just one party.
Let's go for it, yeah.
Yeah, so they're I call them the Uni-Libertarian Party. And the reason why is because they're both capitalists in nature, right? Like hardcore, staunch capitalists in the back. Now you could have people who say well, there's, these platforms that they run on, but corporate Dems and, Republicans are pretty much the same party. Both willing to staunchly defend capitalism. Democrats are more like your regular libertarians who want to protect civil rights, but still keep the capital machine running. And Republicans are, more like your anarchist capitalist. And you might think that's funny that I throw that in there, but truly anarcho-capitalists want to redefine the way government works, right? They're fine with cutting and slashing. Look at Project 2025. That's anarcho-capitalism right there. Let's get rid of all the things we don't like. Let's double down on the things we do want, and rebrand government in our image, right? Hyper-capitalistic, remove, big, beautiful bill, perfect example of what I mean, willing to cut out all public goods to make certain individuals wealthier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not that it's kind of the way I look at it. It's like the Libertarian Party too was established to reinforce those purity elements, right? So Catholicism is a big group of people, but in Catholicism you have groups of people like the Jesuits, right?
Sure.
And they specialize on a certain thing, and that is an impact on the entire, Catholic religion, even if you're not a Jesuit.
Okay.
And so libertarianism is the same thing. We're going to support, staunch capitalism no matter what, and that, and by combining it with civil liberties, it makes Democrats feel like, oh yeah, this is definitely what I envision. And for Republicans, they're like, yes, staunch capitalism. Sometimes they're on board with the civil liberties or not, but you know what I mean? It's really a self fueling and cyclical ideology,
I could see that. So basically what you're saying is, at the end of the day, that entire spectrum is ultimately capitalist, and that's the point.
Yeah.
It's
the
just
varying
different
degrees
shades
of
it.
capitalism, right?
Okay.
And again, there are other ways to think about the left versus right spectrum. And I think that a true leftist, if you're really defining a true leftist, is somebody who supports socialism to some degree. Now, that could be democratic socialism, which is still capitalist in nature, or full on, let's get rid of, the dollar, But I think the big difference is it's just like when you get to the extremes, no matter whether it's left or right, democracy is what's thrown away, right?
Oh, okay.
So, communism can't exist with democracy. Fascism can't exist with democracy. Authoritarianism can't exist with democracy. Having people have the power is an offense, to those hyper idealistic, authoritarian systems. And that's why our capital is a literal temple to democracy. It's a beautiful thing. And Idaho's capital is a replica of that. It doesn't have the same beautiful artwork that our capital does on the inside, with like George Washington and like there's this big apotheosis scene. He's in heaven and at a banquet. But yeah, it's about we the people. And that's why I think democratic socialism is a way that provides for democracy in a current capital system about us. What do we want to do as a society, right? And there's people like that all over the spectrum. I think we get sucked into our own ideology and our own identity.
Democrat versus Republican is easy, but it's like once you start like kind of expanding on that, like it's everybody kind of has a different like thought about what that is, because not every Democrat is a liberal and not every Republican is a conservative. And so it's like I don't think I'm necessarily a Democrat, but it like kind of falls like I think right in the very far left part of being a Democrat, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What would you say, what worldviews would you feel are opposed to, and when I say opposed, doesn't have to be like confrontationally so, but like if you bump into them, they're going to be opposed to yours. Is there a worldview that you would say is sort of?
I think like somebody who is very far right conservative I would have the most, not arguments like you say, but it's like the most fundamental disagreements with. So it's like if I say I think abortion should be legal, that person's going to disagree. I think gay marriage should be legal, that person's going to disagree with that. And I think that the like far right conservative, that kind of aligns with being like, if there's going down a checklist of the things that I believe in, it's going to be like, nope, I don't believe in that. Nope, I don't believe in that. Nope, I don't believe in that.
Got it. When you're interacting with someone that you can tell there's a difference,
there's a fundamental difference. Yes.
What do you feel inside when you're experiencing that? That's a pretty substantial disagreement might be there.
I think a part of it, like I used to get a lot more angry than I do now, where it was almost like I wish I could take their shoulders and shake them and be like, why, like, what, why? Like, why would you believe something like this, or why would you say something like that? Where it's like especially if it's someone that disagrees with the way that I personally am, like, because I am bisexual, so I like both men and women, and like, there's people that are like, I don't think that you should be able to do that at all. Like, and it's like, what makes you, like, why would you think that way versus what makes you think that way? And I think that's like where the curiosity starts to creep in for me, where I'm like, okay, I kind of want to hear out why this is. And then I can go in and be like, okay, this is why I disagree with this and this and this. And I think that like, you're on a track here, but I want to point to this and this to disagree with what you're saying, because it's a lot easier to have a dignified argument with someone when you understand them a little bit more. And understanding doesn't necessarily mean I agree. It just means that I can see that that's their worldview and know that that's what they believe in, and then I can be like, well, this is how I counter, and this is how I feel about it. And that tends to be what my reaction is now, is a lot more of curiosity than with anger. But it did used to be anger, and sometimes it still can be if it's something that I feel is like a little bit crazy, like, because some people have some really crazy opinions about the world. Like, I remember I was having an argument with somebody that was like, well, I don't think that the Holocaust ever happened. And that's where it was like, that's the anger would creep in. But then it's like, well, then the curiosity comes in. It's like, why do you think that way? Like, what guides you to believe that? And normally that's where I can get a fairly okay argument, but a lot of the times it just kind of descends into a name calling thing, or it, like, I want to have more like confrontations like that, where it's like we both not understand necessarily each other, but we can see each other.
Do you, in that particular instance with the Holocaust, do you think, is that anger driven by a sense of justice?
I think that's definitely a part of it, because I, as like somebody who is fairly sensitive to a lot of things, like I remember when we first learned about that, and we would sit in our classroom and kind of like remembering like the Holocaust, like we did like a whole section about it. And so we were watching documentaries, we were watching like people's testimonials, people that lived through it, and like their own like way that they saw it and their own personal stories. Like we read the Diary of Anne Frank, and it broke my heart. Like I like remember sitting like and like reading that book, and I would cry. It like hurt, because I could see myself if I was born in a different time and in that time, and that's where I was, because I'm partially Jewish, so it's like, but I'm also partially German, which is a really weird like thing to have an intersect. But it's like I watched that, and it was like if I was born in that body in that time, I would have gone through that, and I could like see how different my life would be. And it just made me a lot more grateful for what I have. And so it's like when I see somebody like that, I'm like, did you not absorb that? Did you not feel that like sense of like despair and like agony for your fellow man, and understand that like this is something that humans are capable of doing to each other?
I'd say opposing worldviews are definitely one that bring violence against, for lack of a better term, the innocent. Whether it's World Trade Center, plane crashing into them in 2001, or whether it's just a bad guy in Star who's arrested just a couple days ago for doing really terrible things. Those worldviews I stand, and I think a lot of people could say that's a righteous stand, to stand against somebody doing harm to other people, right? So that's like this is an easy stand. This is an easy one to be on. And then on the other side of it, I would say opposed might even be a hard word, because when I use words like opposed, well, let me frame it here. If you and I were having a discussion and it turned into an argument, and it's public, there's people watching,
right?
And people have certain ideas and rules for what that argument looks like.
Sure.
But now if somebody out there watching and frames it and gets on socials and says, Caleb and Brandon are at war, all of a sudden, subconsciously, that allows people to think the rules of whatever this is are different. An argument has certain rules, and a war, obviously, we wouldn't be at a real war, but it changes the way people think about what's happening here.
Right.
So I would say opposed does the same thing. When we use the word opposed, we automatically side and then other. So when I look at somebody with different point of views or different worldviews, which I know is part of how you asked it, that's how I like to look at it, because I don't necessarily have the right worldview on everything. And just because I have a worldview doesn't mean somebody else can't have a worldview. I might engage in argument or discourse over that, and I might even get mad and angry and passionate about it. That's still okay. Whatever that person's worldview is theirs, and they have it for whatever reasons that matter to them.
Yeah.
So worldviews. So it's hard to say what am I standing against. It's more like I just want to know what you're thinking and why. Now, things I can say, worldviews that I would do that on are things like abortion. I would ask and argue and try to find out why are you for that while I'm against it. That person isn't a bad person, though, which I know people on my side of the issue,
Right.
we tend to think other people are bad people because they believe in that. And I think that's really, really sad, especially when I opened it up with my whole world framework comes from thinking I'm a subject of this eternal Father. How does that line up? If all of a sudden I hate somebody else, or if all of a sudden I'm so mad that I'm willing to, make signs that say, if you believe this, you're a bad person.
Right.
I might make signs for awareness, but that's different. I hope, maybe some people wouldn't see it that way, but I would hope it would just be, I don't hate you. I just want you to know more about what I'm saying.
Right.
And if you want to know, come and have a conversation and we can talk. Because in that kind of thing, I'm not going to bring violence to somebody, right? And I know that happens all over the nation right now. Differing views result in violence.
It seems like it's so difficult for people to just be curious.
Yes.
Oh, well, I would conflict with the worldview that some people are more valuable than others. Because I think, everybody as a child of God is worth as much, each person is worth as much as it's every other person. Regardless of how much money they make or how productive they are to society. And of course that's a judgment call too, who's productive and who isn't to society. But everybody has value. So people that don't believe that, I'm in opposition to that kind of opinion. If you think some people are better than others, I'm not going to agree with you. And if your actions reflect that belief, I'm going to oppose those actions as much as I can.
What would you say right now are current relevant examples of that opposition? Like, in other words, like other worldviews that you see that are communicating different values for different people.
Well, it seems like history is going around, or we're in a 100-year cycle or something like that, but we definitely have a rise in authoritarianism. And the playbook that our administration is using, it's exactly the same thing that the Nazis did in Germany. I mean, how could you not see it? Okay, they start with demonizing one of the weakest minorities or smallest minorities in our Hispanic population, and particularly immigrants. And they are going after the gay and trans people. And now they're saying that all Democrats are socialists and communists, and they should be persecuted. So I can't think of anything more in opposition to my worldview than that. I attended school right here in Boise, and I remember in junior high, probably grade school and junior high, we had Holocaust survivors come to our class and speak to us about their experiences. And it's, if you're talking about somebody that's in opposition to my worldview, well, that would be a Holocaust denier. And those people definitely exist. And especially someone that thinks it was in any way a proper way for a government to behave.
Mm-hmm.
And now our government is mirroring a lot of the things that they did back then, and inevitably that kind of hatred, we know what it leads to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we haven't seen it before. So yeah, I think people need to stand up and take a stand against that kind of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really sad that this has come around.
Why do you think that attitude resonates so much, or seems to be? It's hard to tell. I mean, when you're looking at world events and media and social media, like it's really easy to make it look like, oh, the majority's over here or the majority's over there, and it can create this sense of just confusion. But it does seem like there at least was a lot of resonance with that kind of anger. Where do you think that anger came from?
Well, I suppose if you want to go back to tribalism,
Mm.
you know, back in the evolution of humankind, when one tribe saw their only salvation was the complete destruction of another.
Mm.
But even then, I don't think that was the answer.
Why is that? Why does that seem to be the answer? Or what? Why is that? What is the fear of the other? Why? That's something I've never understood personally. I've never understood why that takes root so easily.
Well, I'd say there's a lot of facets to that.
Mm.
I mean, people get a sense of belonging, being part of a group, and maybe that group is healthy and maybe it's unhealthy, but they do get a sense of belonging by being part of that group, and group leaders influence people and create cohesion through different methodology, some of which is positive and some of which is negative.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use the negative influence to create cohesion, create a group, create a cult, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what's happening.
Mm. Mm.
And of course, that's not unprecedented either. It's
No.
happened, throughout history.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's the cycle that continues to repeat and has since the dawn of time, is that division and then instigation of conflict. Do you have like an example that you'd be willing to share of like a specific sort of topic, or where you've experienced personally, like, okay, someone wants to argue with me, and so I'm experiencing this moment where I'm being challenged directly to defend my position. Have you experienced that?
Not. I mean, I've definitely experienced it. I don't know about I've definitely had it on my worldview.
Yeah.
I've definitely had that. And experienced it. And usually, I mean, I can push back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But
what does that experience feel like physiologically, when you realize, okay, we're gonna go somewhere? Like,
I'm typically a nervous person, so I think I get pretty nervous on people pushing back on my worldview, in that sense. But I just don't enjoy confrontation. Is ultimately what it really is, probably. Not the fact that someone's pushing against my worldview, because I can handle critiques and stuff like that pretty well. But
okay.
It's usually just the confrontation that I don't handle well. So.
Do you find that when a critique is being presented, do you go to a place of anticipating confrontation when you sense a critique is coming of your worldview?
No, I don't. I don't
Okay.
think so. Usually because I'm just I like to learn from other people and hear what they have to say and take it back and see how it will impact my worldview, less than pushing back and being so stuck in my worldview.
Are you able to tell when it is going to go confrontational? Like are there any tells that you sort of pick up?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, I mean, you can definitely tell when there's certain topics that are brought up or just the hostilities that are brought up. And some I've already listed, like the topic-wise, you know,
Yeah.
national parks and things like that.
But it sounds like you avoid talking about them.
I usually just say I don't have an answer for everything, you know, but I'm just saying what I have, my worldview, I think is the best in the sense that it's the best answer for most things. Everyone else's worldview has more problems.
Oh, okay.
Seeing at it from a different perspective almost feels like you're admitting that you were wrong, but that's not necessarily true.
But
And
it feels like it.
It feels wrong. It feels like you're being like, okay, I'm hearing you out because I think you're right, and I think that is not necessarily correct. I can objectively listen to somebody else argue about something that I don't agree with, and I can hear that, and I can be like, okay, I can see how you got there, but I wonder if there's a way to get you to where I am.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to agree 1,000%, because I think that even, yes, as a liberal, it's like I can understand that there's different, it's like a sliding scale, like in any political compass. It's like somebody's going to be way over here and they can still be liberal, but they kind of end right here, maybe even closer to somewhere in the middle. And then somebody can be a little bit of a Republican, and then somebody can be over here. It's never a thing of you're believing in this because you're a Republican, or you're believing in this because you're a liberal. But there are just always fundamental disagreements, if that makes sense. I feel like I went down a really weird stream.
No, actually, that's really in line with kind of the conversations we've been having. So,
yeah. And I love listening to other people talk about what they believe, because it always kind of teaches me something new, whether it's I wonder where they got that from, because that's not true. There's very much things that prove against this, but then it's also somebody brings something up and I'm like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that, and I wonder how that impacts my view of things, and I wonder if I can go down a little rabbit hole, because I just love to I love to learn. I love to be I see this thing and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder how much I can dissect this before, I run into a dead end or
well, and what
whatever.
you're talking about there is curiosity.
Yeah. And I like it, and it's okay for people to change too. I think that's another thing that people tend to go against, because it means admitting that they're wrong, but sometimes you are wrong.
Do you think change, well, and that's an interesting thing too, because does changing mean that you were wrong, or does it mean that you didn't have enough definition? Is it about being right or wrong, or is it about expanding?
I think it can depend on what the argument is. If you're using, say, a source that has been disproven many times, then yes, objectively you're wrong.
Yeah. Why do you think curiosity is so difficult?
Judgment. For a long time, it's been said that fear of public speaking is the number one phobia. Then I read a book that's talked about actually interpersonal human confrontation is the real human phobia. And then I heard it further defined that it steps even down to a more primal thing of being judged. So that interpersonal human confrontation, whether it's physical wrestling, you're in there, you're fighting somebody, but it's that judgment. And if you lose in a actual fight, that's the ultimate judgment.
There's
right?
shame.
There's shame. And if I'm curious, I might. We've seen movies that have great debaters, and then in those debates, they usually, at some point, somebody gets that boom, that one shot, that mic drop moment, and then what is it? And it pans over to the other guy who looks like an idiot now.
Right.
So that's what I think is going to happen to me if somebody else gets that mic drop moment. I don't want to be judged.
Yeah.
So instead of backing down and being curious, now I'm just pressing into a pillar. A sand pillar tower that's falling apart.
What don't I know? Or do I know enough? Or was I right about this thing? I think every challenge should be an opportunity for someone to do at least 20 to 30 minutes of their own research on something. Then come back with an informed opinion, just like you would in school. philosophy, education. These are things that like we should really work on helping, promote, because the more someone has dealt and been exposed with entertaining different ideas, the easier it is for them to make sense of what's real and what's not. And I'm not gonna lie, maybe I'm going into this conversation and I completely disagree with this person, and they brought up something like vaccine injury, and then I was like, had to look into it, and then I realized, oh, they have courts that literally make it so that way these things go away, they have protections. And well, even if I don't think that there's mass amounts of vaccine injuries, now I'm curious why they have courts to protect, you know what I mean? These are things I think they're important. It's important to take your opponent's ideas as valid and serious. I mean, if they were valid and serious enough for them to incorporate into their identity, even if they're not necessarily important to you at the moment, maybe you just don't really fully grasp the emotion, the data, or the relevance of that thing. Just like ICE is going around kidnapping people, without due process. U.S. citizens, arresting them for days, if not weeks, deporting U.S. citizens. And the conversation around that is, either it's so short and succinct with people. They're like, well, they're just following the law, and it's like, but they're not. But even if you bring that up, it doesn't matter, because it's to these, these conversations about what's important, right? Is it important that we get rid of criminals in our country? You could argue that. I would say, yeah, there's probably a validity for that. I'd also argue that maybe it's better that actual criminals actually spend time in our prisons when they're here, not caught abroad, but caught in here. Because you wouldn't want to send a criminal like Donald Trump yells about, they're sending all their prisoners and they're saying, lies. But point is, we already know that that's not something that we would want done to us. So why would we do it to someone else? And that broad perspective of I think it's people feel like they're supporting their party, and when it comes to things that are difficult, that they don't like, the hard issues about what we do about immigration, what we do about pregnancy, what we do about this or that, it is much easier to just throw out your little punchline and then walk away, not deal with the gravity of what that means, not deal with the gravity of what's happening. It should disturb people, I think, that they're just, the courts have said that they violated immigration 10,000 times, right? 10,000 times ICE has violated the court orders, and that should disturb people. Rule of law, human sanctity, even if you believe people should be deported, should those people be treated badly during that process? Should they not have access to legal representation? Would you want those things done to you? The golden rule, Jesus said it, Buddha has, said it. Anybody who I think has, sat down and thought about justice would, you wouldn't want the things happening to you that is happening in ICE. That you wouldn't want the things that are happening to you that are happening in Gaza. And even if you feel like Jews have a right to, have a government in Israel, it's okay to still believe that kids shouldn't be bombed.
Right.
And it's just, we need to have more compassion for each other. And, it's, nobody chose to be born. Some of the people living in these other countries, even if they weren't made impoverished by capitalists going over there and stealing their resources, even if that's not the case, for someone to travel hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, so that way their kids could have a better life, that's the American dream.
If we can move towards understanding, I don't have to convince you. I don't have to bring you over to my side. If I can remember, as soon as I have to convince you that my idea is a good idea, I'm already losing. I'm already drowning. Because what does that really reveal about me if I have to convince you? Does that mean I actually don't think my idea is a good idea? Am I not confident in it? So if I can just be confident in what I believe and go, hey, let's talk. I think that's where understanding is. And that's where I truly feel more comfortable with what I believe. I think if I really have to push, then that may mean that I feel uneasy about other people not believing, and maybe why am I believing? If there's 8 people who believe one way and I believe, me and this other person believe a different way, am I on the wrong side?
It's an insecurity.
I think so. And that might not be true of everybody.
Sure.
And I certainly think it's true of many. We find strength in numbers, right? Which is true. And it is a survival mechanism. If we're all doing the same thing, it's easier to survive that way. As soon as we start doing different things, if we're going to be successful, we have to be understanding. I have to be understanding.
For most of my growing up, I mean, I was very staunchly conservative and like, these are the way things are. But then, you know, just examples that have been brought up in like news and things like that. There's one, let's see, like I used to be like, oh, you've got to completely support police officers and everything they do. They're just looking to do what is right. Obviously, through things, I just feel like my worldview has completely changed on that. And it's like, if you give people power, can you always trust them that they're not going to abuse that power? And I think that happens with police officers and stuff. So that would be an instance where I saw so much information that I was like, I'm starting to feel like my worldview is incorrect here. And so I think, you know,
How do you
valid examples.
how do you navigate that sensation of like what is that like for you to experience? I think my worldview might need some tweaking. Like even physiologically, when you have that initial moment of like, oh no, like what is that like for you?
It's tough because I feel like you've been propagandized. Is really what it is, right? Like you're like, man, I've been taught this my whole life and I think it's wrong.
Is that scary?
And it's I want to say it's scary. I think it's just hard to believe. Like you're like, whoa, I can't believe this was like my parents were wrong, or you know, people I respected, they were just wrong. They fully believe it, and they're not wrong in teaching me it. But it was like, I think with the evidence I now have, I can say they were wrong.
Does that trigger in you a curiosity?
Yes, I would say so. Once it happened like the first time, it definitely developed a curiosity for like, what else have I been taught that could be wrong? To where you really start to study and look at it more. So for me, I guess, yeah, one point changing my worldview impacted a whole lot for me to research and look into more things that could change my worldview.
I love that. So it sounds like you're hungry for expansion. It sounds like.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah. Like when someone says something and I'm like, I totally disagree with that. I would like to see their side more. To where I have to like try to understand their side better rather than just attacking it and assuming they're wrong.
Have you ever experienced a time where you have had maybe one frame of reference and it's been changed? Like,
Sure.
What's that experience been like for you?
Well, I would say a good example is I was always very skeptical of the self-driving car, thinking that it's really not possible, you know, and to imagine where we would have self-driving trucks hauling freight on our highways and how scary that is. But just recently, I was in California and my cousin bought a brand new Tesla. And I'm somewhat opposed to Tesla because I don't like Elon Musk. But I think he sees Elon in a different light. And he wanted to help support SpaceX, and he really wanted to get an EV so he's not pumping pollution into the atmosphere anymore. Anyway, we took Tesla, and just last week drove it up to Mount Wilson, which is about as curvy, twisty road as you'll find anywhere, Idaho, California, or
Anywhere else?
it is paved, but we let it self-drive, and it did just fine. And my cousin even said that he felt like the car probably did a better job driving that road than he would have. And me, having grown up here in Idaho, anytime I get on a curvy, twisty road, I usually try and go as fast as I can just for fun. And I know there's nothing logical about that, but I just want to. But the car drove a nice, sensible space, and you know, it's a road where if you go off the side, it's very steep. And so it was a little spooky, but the car did fine, and I have totally changed my mind about self-driving cars. I'm thinking within a decade or two, pretty much all the new cars will be self-driving. And it actually might be better. If they maintain proper following distance, traffic will flow better. So, I don't know, I have a whole new perspective on it.
And you survived. You survived changing your
Right.
mind. Nothing, you're still here.
Yeah, the car didn't do anything bad at all, which...
Well, and I'm speaking to like, because I feel like so much, and it's heightened so much now. Once a frame of mind or a worldview about something sort of sets in, when a change happens, it's almost disorienting. Like in the sense of like, I'm going through an ego death just because I'm changing my mind about something. Like, but you just changed your mind and it was fine.
Yeah, well, hopefully your ego isn't so rigid that you can't accept new information when it comes to you.
When I was early in law enforcement, I had one thought about, drug addicts, alcohol addicts, bad guys and criminals, right? They were all just the same. And then when I got into law enforcement, obviously still with that idea of justice that I already defined as preventing the injustice. But then I started seeing the people behind the addiction, the people behind the crime. Not that sometimes it made their crime acceptable at all, but it was like, oh, that person was hurt when they were a kid also. They still need to be dealt with, and there's no like getting away from that. But they're not just they're not the evil bad guy in the movie who has no backstory, right? Which is why we've seen all these movies in the last 15 years give backstories to all the bad guys, because
Yeah.
because now, it humanizes them, and they're not just an evil entity.
Right.
If we want evil entities, we watch horror, because there's no backstory that explains that. But in everything else, there might be people doing evil things, and it doesn't justify it, but it might be because they had evil done to them. And now this is how they're poorly reacting to it. Do they still need to be dealt with swiftly? Absolutely. And especially when they then victimize another person. But I'd say that was the biggest thing that made me go, whoa, it's not black and white. That's when my world started to become a little more gray. And it helped me to have more empathy, I think, for people, even if I'm like, you're still an idiot. Why can you not get this together, right? Like I can still almost be harsh in my language, and at the same time go, they didn't choose that right off the bat. They didn't go, I'm going to throw my life down the drain and do this. No, it was steps. It was things that they grew up with, and then it was steps that they made. And sometimes they were pushed. Sometimes things happened out of their control. Sometimes they were hurt or whatever. But I guess it just humanized the bad guy. Now all of a sudden they weren't bad guys; they were just doing bad things. They still made choices. Sometimes I hear people go, "Oh, I made a mistake." No, robbing that person was not a mistake. That was a choice. And when I hear people say, "I made bad choice," that lets me know they're in tune with what they did.
They're accountable.
They're accountable. But if they're saying, "I made a mistake," that's like, yeah, it was a mistake of judgment that caused your choice, but you're not. They are still not willing to engage in that accountability of choice. They want to blame it on a mistake.
Do you think that comes back to that fear of judgment?
Absolutely, and self-judgment mainly, because somewhere they know that they're hurting, and this is the way that they've protected. I'm making some big generalizations.
Sure.
But they've been hurt. This is the way that they're protected, and it's not good. Because somewhere inside they still know that, man, I'm doing what was done to me.
But what's the experience like when you do change your mind on a position?
I think it takes a lot of I think it would take if depending on the issue, it would take maybe if there was a discovery of something, or if there was a scientifically something had been misunderstood and now they understand and they're able to be like, this is the reason why this changed, or it would take a lot of different sources for me to be like, okay, yes, okay, I see it was me not looking in the right places or talking to the right people.
Yeah.
Be like, it would fall over here and I'd be able to look at it and be like, okay, yes, I see where this person is coming from, and I can see that now I can add to my understanding of what the issue is.
Yeah.
Or if something were to change drastically, if there was a scientific discovery of when really life is able to happen, or
That's what I was
that
going to
kind of
ask
thing.
you.
Yeah, it's if there was something that very much was able to prove that something if that embryo within the woman's belly was actually able to be taken out and be a person on their own without being connected to another person, to be able to grow and sustain and to be able to have an existence and a conscious as a person, I could maybe be swayed to think differently on an issue.
That's an interesting, because with that, how would, just in that thought exercise, how does that affect, because you don't want to lose is the sense of autonomy that that a woman has.
Yes.
So that would be an interest, and I think that is the core of the dilemma in that whole conversation. Is I think a lot of people, what I've observed is there is an assumption that the people on the right have less of a value for the woman. And what I'm observing speaking to people on the right is it's just they don't know how to resolve it. It's no, they're both the same. So what do I do?
Yeah.
And I've seen two guys sitting in this very chair kind of look stuck. I don't know what to do, because from their vantage point, it's two even values. And so how do you solve for one?
And I think a part of whenever I'm having a conversation with someone about it, because sometimes people will bring up, well, if somebody murders a pregnant woman, they get 2 charges.
Right.
And so it's doesn't that inherently make that a life? And I was by law, for sure. But law is not that it's not scientific, but it's not the end all be all. It's not because laws are not always necessarily correct. We've had laws in the past that have
They're
allowed
social contracts.
Yeah, it really isn't the it was written in the heavens and the stars, so that's the way it must and shall be. But I paint it as the reason why there's 2 charges, and maybe this isn't exactly the way that they do it, but this is the way that I see it. The reason why it's 2 is because that woman was planning on having that baby. That's her choice. Was she was planning on having a kid, and once that baby came out, it's her baby. You know what I mean? And so, because of that, whoever killed those two technically killed that person's future.
That was being chosen by the mother.
Yes, that was being chosen by the mother. And that's why I think that it's hard to explain that to them, though, because they still, like, that's their fundamental issue, is that they still see that at conception. Like, they see that it's that no matter what point that life is at, that is a life. But it's like, I think they don't think that they are, but they're ignoring the person that is actually carrying the baby. They're looking at it in a very, like, and this is to go back to, like, when you look at an issue broadly versus when we look at it personally. They're looking at it very broadly in a biblical and idealistic sense, versus looking at it like, this is a person that maybe had something happen to them, or this is a person that is making a hard choice. Because honestly, most of the time, people aren't going up to an abortion clinic and being like, "One abortion, please." Like, that is never in the history of ever happened.
Right.
It is a woman making a very difficult choice a lot of the time, because it's going to be hard on her body either way.
Right.
And sometimes she didn't even have a choice in that happening to her. And sometimes they don't have a choice in deciding if that baby is going to come out alive or not.
Yeah.
Where I think that it's like bringing that up. Sometimes, for some reason, it really angers people when you bring that up. But it's like, if sometimes a woman is making a choice that is maybe something that you can't understand. If you can't understand that issue, then it's hard to look at it that way. But it's like, if I were to be wanting to have a baby, but I realized that if that baby came out, it would kill me, and or it would kill the baby. So what you ask then is, whose life is more valuable?
And not only that, but who makes the choice?
And who makes the choice? And back then, it was certainly not the woman who would make that choice. But now we're able to look and be like, that is an insanely difficult decision. And it's very hard, because sometimes women don't always make the choice we expect. And sometimes, they'll choose the life of the child over themselves, but that is their choice to make.
I think the issue is long-term solution versus short-term solution, right? Because I feel like conservatives offer long-term solutions. So, like, you need fathers in the household. You need, a two-parent household. You need religion. You need a community, and that's kind of their answer. But, like, to bring that back, like, to have where everyone's being raised by two parents and in a religious household, and taught everything from when they're young. To bring that back is.
It sounds like idealism.
It's like, exactly. And the short-term solution, that's the dilemma. I honestly don't know what the short-term solution is in my worldview, other than having more community, local politics kind of stepping in that area.
How would they step in?
Like, instead of federal assistance programs, maybe like local assistant programs. Like, that's kind of, I just feel like locally people care more about each other, right?
Okay.
So localizing things instead of having the federal government be in charge of giving out assistance to those who may have an abortion but now cannot have an abortion. They're going to need more money, more income. So just putting it at local, state level.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the solution is more assistance, more social assistance, basically in the form of, like, things like food stamps, things like income support, maybe things like, more birth control options. I mean, kind of help
Better
me.
education for
Better
sure.
education. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Some thoughts that I guess I've had is, to apply for certain things, it seems like it's just kind of a computer. You apply, whether you meet the requirements, you're accepted or denied, right? And the requirements are pretty black and white. Like, you make this much, but if you make over this much, you can no longer. I think everything needs to be individualized. So you're meeting with an individual case manager, I guess, or something like that, on the local level, community, state, that can understand what you're actually needing. Is kind of my thoughts, rather than just black and white requirements.
Which it sounds like that's larger government in a way, right? Because
larger government on the local level.
On the local level,
which
so
I'm more for.
Okay.
To answer this question.
So this
like I said, it doesn't meet my worldview, but that's kind of what I have to accept because my worldview doesn't work.
That's interesting. Is it that your worldview doesn't work, or is it that it just doesn't have enough definition?
Maybe. Well, my worldview is that parents are raising their kids right, and
that's the idealism.
That's the idealism, right?
Which, I mean, I'm wondering if what we're exploring here is the reality that you need both idealism and pragmatic, a pragmatic reality to the fact that we're not at a space of idealism, but how do we also, one, agree on what the ideal is, and then two, tack towards getting to that, which, I mean, from my vantage point, what I'm hearing you say is the ultimate ideal is that children are born to people who can take care of them. Right. And so a society is better for children that are in an environment where they are taken care of. Thus, how do we, through education, get to a place of that ideal? That's going to take a couple generations maybe for education to make an impact. And in the meantime, we're making sure that everybody is taken care of so that they can get to that generational space, which again, that's like both sides of that. There's a lot of government involvement if you think about it.
Yes,
between
there's
education
there's a lot of conflicting things of what I desire and what I realize has to be done.
Well, and I wonder what is there in that to look at? I wonder. Like, as opposed to just going, now I have to completely toss this worldview aside or just accept that it has flaws. Is it more of a case of going, what are the variables there and how do those translate into an equation that makes sense? Like, do you think it's possible to get to a place where your worldview kind of has enough complexity to sort of have a modularity to it? Does that make sense? I don't know.
It does make sense, and I'm just deciding whether I would allow that to happen in myself,
really?
right? Like,
why?
I'm just like, I love my worldview so much of like, this is the way the world should function and be, that I want to keep it.
Yeah.
But then also accept that it doesn't work.
Interesting. I really admire your courage in admitting that, because I think that's something, I don't think most people can do that, quite frankly. You're not getting defensive. You're also going, it's just really hard for me to let go of some things.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think, is it about letting go of something, or is it about understanding the desire behind it to a greater degree?
I'm not sure, because I just think I'm so, like, if the world functioned, the way I thought it would be perfect, right?
Well, is your life perfect?
No.
But do you operate, I guess, exactly the way that you want?
That's the other thing. I don't think I operate the way that I think everyone else should operate.
Why not?
I think because I'm human, right?
What does it mean to be human?
I mean, I don't think I can think of a single person, right, that has not done something against their better judgment.
You go to church. You say the creeds. You do the worship. You hear the sermons. Those values that you hear as part of your faith, you incorporate into who you are. Now go to politics. You hear a slogan you like. You hear something that, you're like, that's in my values. Your party becomes part of your identity, which I think is a dangerous thing, but it's a psychological thing. And people who do politics know this. That's why they use that kind of messaging.
do you experience a pressure to endorse what you validate?
Interesting. Yes, yes. My experience has been that if I validate, that automatically means I agree. Or I think maybe that's what you meant by endorse. Now that I validate it, I got to stand behind it.
Yeah.
Which, in the strictest sense of the word, and in the mental health aspect, doesn't mean that at all. But you're right. Somehow validating has become intertwined with endorsing or now agreeing and supporting. Wow.
It's almost like to validate something is to then reduce as opposed to expand. Because I validated your position, thus now I cannot oppose it.
I would love to be able to say that I am not somebody that is purely driven by a political drive. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, I think that informs a lot of what I do as a person because of the way that I feel about human life and seeing that. Sorry, I got distracted a little bit.
It's okay.
It's hard to separate the two because it's I almost feel like sometimes I have to fight for that because somebody wants to take that away. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I have to kind of find a good middle ground where it doesn't feel like I'm only living my life because of this of a political view or I'm only doing this because this is how I align politically. It's I want to do it because I'm a human and I want to make everyone's life as good as it possibly can be and make everyone feel like they have all the freedoms that they could want, and not in a people should be able to kill each other kind of way, but it's people should be able to go about their life and not be fearful that it could one day not be that way. Sure, we can give people rights, but those can be taken away again. And it's happened. It happens all the time.
That is hard because I would approach it first, I guess, asking what that person thinks about what is growing, or if it's the woman themselves, or if it's somebody just on that perspective of the issue. What do they think about what's happening inside that womb? And that would give me some understanding of where they're coming at it from. So I'd say in order to even get mutual understanding, first I just have to be willing to seek understanding, which, Stephen Covey, back 20, 30 years ago, and the 7 highly effective habits of people, the 7 habits of highly effective people, seek first to understand, then be understood. That was, and if then you go back, that's what Jesus said also. And he's count the cost. First you have to know what's going to happen, and then you can start to make that actual plan. Well, if I want to build a house, what do I need? Right? So,
and if you want to interact, so if I were to interpret that for this, if you want to be able to interact with somebody, you first need to understand why they are interacting with you.
Exactly. And if they don't even believe that entity or the group of cells is a human, okay, at what point, which of course we've seen the evolution of the argument all go. And I guess the question or the actual discussion would be so fluid because it's going to be different for every person.
Right, because every person's got a different mindset.
If I shift it from proving I'm right and convincing you to do what I say, then all of a sudden it becomes individuals.
Yeah.
And this individual is going to be a little different than this individual and this individual. And so really, I know it seems like a cop-out, but it would have to be with each person.
Yeah, no, it's not a cop-out at all.
I take it very personally because a lot of the times it is pretty personal. Like what you believe in is directly connected a lot of the times to a religion or your morals. And like politically now, it's very easy to connect with that because people have had so many vast, diverse experiences. And so it's like if I'm coming as somebody who is like gay and who aligns like that, and I'm bisexual technically, and it's like someone comes to me and is like, you shouldn't have the right to marry, and I think that you should die or something like that, something crazy like that, then it's like, of course I'm going to take that personally because it's against my person.
It's a question of feeling safe at that point.
Yes, yeah, and I think that that's why I do wish it was a little bit more of a conversation versus it feeling like I have to fight for my right to like exist as a person.
We're all human, and we should come from that place first. And I wish more people would do that, come with more compassion, instead of just immediately being like, oh, I don't like what you have to say, you're an idiot. I'm not gonna lie, I do that a lot. I get pretty, I'm the worst. I'm the biggest hypocrite about that, but I get mad sometimes. Like, I get mad, and I think it's just ignorance. I think we all get mad at each other's ignorance, and we should be more gracious towards each other. And I think we should just take a moment to step back and not be emotionally attached. Who cares if the person at the end of the day disagrees with you? Be thankful for that you're alive. I wish more people had gratitude. Just gratitude.
Can I add another layer to that?
Go ahead.
Obviously we're both white cis male, so we have maybe a little bit of it's a little bit easier for us to say be emotionally detached, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously we can't really speak to the experience of someone that's maybe in a different space that way, safety-wise than us, but what does that layer for you as someone who is white cis male? Is there an added layer about that emotional attachment? Is there an added sensitivity that creates for you as you think about that?
Right, and I think that's a good point. Like, privilege is a big deal, right? Obviously, I've had far less problems with the police over my life. It's not that I haven't been pulled over, but I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's just like we treat people in society based on who fits the homogenous vision and who doesn't differently.
If I'm not vulnerable enough with myself to go, hey, anger, what are you doing here? What are you telling me? What do I need to deal with? Then I won't be able to move past and have those different reactions. I think.
In a way, like, I feel like
believe.
you're also speaking to like trauma.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right.
I think where I'd like to sort of close off, if you're all right with this, speaking to your experience in law enforcement, obviously another one of the big conversations that's happening right now is kind of going back to the immigration issue, but like, just again, that's sort of escalating the already kind of very prevalent conversations that are relevant to that world.
Absolutely.
Of, especially people of color and sort of that perception of like the relationship with law enforcement. How do you navigate the reality that people of color have a different experience? And as a person in law enforcement, taking all of this stuff that we've talked about, what does that look like for you as you navigate what you do?
Yeah. I'd say, for one, the different experience, if I'm not willing to at least say, yes, it's different, then I'm already closing off, right? Do I know what the difference is? Do I have to agree? I don't think I have to agree. I think I have to at least say they believe they're experiencing something different, and I have to validate that. And certainly we can see some metrics of a difference happening. But I think mentally I have to be in a place where I'm open to that. And in the immigration issue, well, let me back up to just general people of color. the military and law enforcement being two governmental branches, ironically, were the first ones to be forced to accept people of color, right? So, and that acceptance wasn't good necessarily. There's tons of great movies about, right? Like Men of Honor with Cuba Gooding Jr., Deep Sea Diver, like the first black dude who in the Navy becomes what he became, and it's an incredible story. The Red Tails, the movie's out right now about the all-black fighter squadron, and there was one during the Korean War. Gosh, that was another great movie. I think it was Glenn Powell and the dude from Loki.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was blackballed for a little bit by Disney. But so we have all these stories of people of color being forced and wanting. They're forced. The military, the law enforcement is forced to accept and allow them, and then they come in. They face even a different level of discrimination. However, my point that I'm driving at is law enforcement and military and fire are also some of the oldest institutions that have always had people of color now, way before private institutions. So in some ways, when people criticize law enforcement, military, fire, I'm like, hey, let's remember the actual history that even though they were forced, through that forcing, friendships were made. And then after a friendship is made, then it's like, hey man, stop giving Joe such a hard time. He's a good dude. He did all the same things that you did today, right? Which is what, there's always that one person in the movie that helps change somebody's mind. So
it's almost like you're talking about like forcing the issue of diversification.
Right.
That was first really experienced by law enforcement.
Law enforcement and the military. So my point, I guess, with the institutions is they've been diverse longer than what people want to admit. So when we have movements that say, cops hate people of color, it's like, no, they were admittedly, I don't want to like whitewash history.
Right.
But after they were forced to accept people of color, friendships were made. And then it was like accepted, and then they were welcomed, and then they were normal, right? So I know that's kind of a crappy way to describe human beings' experiences, but if I'm going to put it into a tangible kind of way of placing it, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And law enforcement, military, fire were the first ones. So they've been with people of color longer than private industry. Unless we're going to include the worst way of having people of color,
Sure.
In our employ, at the nicest way of saying it.
Yeah.
So
Why do you think that the perception remains then? I mean, what do you attribute that to?
I think it's easy. Well, nobody, even the most law-abiding citizen, doesn't like it when they get pulled over, right? Like, I pulled people over that were like, I haven't gotten a ticket in 32 years, and like, yeah, and you're not going to get a ticket today either. I just want you to be safe. But nobody likes it. I remember being a little kid, and my parents would get pulled over, and I didn't think they were going to go to jail. I just didn't know what was happening, right? And being scared. So I think there's just it's an authority thing, right? And when we look at law enforcement less like wanting to help, which here in the Valley, it's easy to see law enforcement as wanting to help because we have a much better relationship with law enforcement. You go somewhere like Compton in California, and that's not how people see them. But that's not really what their function is anymore. The crime is so high that law enforcement isn't able to do that community policing anymore. All they're doing is mitigating disaster. And then when that spills over into normal people's lives and normal people get hurt, I think there's a sense of, why did this happen?
Yeah.
Which is a good question to have, and it needs to be examined. And I think patience is needed when we're in those in those situations.
And I guess making it like super individual, like how do you, so say you pull someone over and they happen to be a person of color, is there anything in your mindset that you have?
Oh,
either
it's a black dude, I'm a little more on edge.
Okay.
No,
No?
but I'm saying like
Yeah.
that's
Well,
essentially the question,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, and not just you being more on edge, but do you have an awareness of like they might be perceiving me a certain way?
Oh, sure.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So not just from your perspective, but also from theirs. Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah. That is a good, I don't know that, I know I've thought about that way with teenagers and with moms in the car with kids. Because I remember being the little kid, so I have a sensitivity to that. And the amount of teenage girls that just start crying because it's the first time, or or not their first time, and they got a ticket last time and their parents told them if you get another ticket you're not going to be able to drive.
Yeah.
And the amount of young teenage boys who just like, they're just scared.
Yeah.
So I have a sensitivity to that. As far as the other, that's a good question. I don't know that I've thought of it that way. Unless it's limited English speaking people,
Okay.
mostly of Hispanic and Mexican culture, when they know that they have something that they shouldn't.
Gotcha.
But usually they're the nicest people also. They're
Right.
not fighting at all.
Yeah.
Like I use my Google Translate so many times and they're willing to just, it's a conversation right there, and they know that they know that they're doing something wrong. But other than that, I don't know that I've considered, I wonder what that person's feeling, except for outside of the normal,
Right.
as soon as you see
Is
the
your-
lights in the rearview mirror,
Yeah,
I know everyone's heart rate goes up.
Right. Yeah.
My heart rate goes up.
Right.
I
Well,
could
go
be in
back-
a cop car and like, oh man, why is that cop behind me?
Right. Right. Well, is that something that, now that that question's been posed to you, is that something, do you think there's a curiosity of like, I wonder if there is something to mine there? Does that create a curiosity in you?
Yeah, I think so. I think the way I've been trained is pretty dang good in greeting first, right? Greeting and introduction. So I don't think I'd necessarily change that. And then there's certain safety things that wouldn't change. But as far as my mindset goes, I wonder what they're experiencing right now outside of the normal. I think so. But I don't know how it would practically change.
Right, because it's more of like, yeah, it might not change anything that you actually do. It's just an
Right.
energetic thing where it's like
Yeah.
something, because, how our nervous systems are, they do transmit.
Absolutely.
However you believe in that, like whether it be just, it's my actions
Yeah.
are the same actions, but they're executed differently.
Yeah.
It's always a fascinating thing that I experience when I have that realization of, I've not been aware of this.
Yeah.
Part of this person's experience of me. Now that I am,
Right.
I might not do anything different.
Right.
Again, it's like, it kind of goes back to that understanding and validation kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to change who I am, but I might, just that awareness might
Yep.
shift something in the dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great way to summarize it, because it almost, I'm not going to change the shape, but it did unlock a little sliver of, there is one more piece here that I
Yeah.
didn't have uncovered before. So I can peel that little sticker and I'm getting a more full color palette.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that is a good perspective to think about.